2016. And for those of you who may wonder why we're meeting at 6:30, we were supposed to be sealing town meeting tonight, but because our newly elected town moderator was so efficient, we finished town meeting in 2 days.
Amazing. Very good.
So here we are. We had the meeting scheduled, and there were a few other important points of business to do, so we decided to hold the meeting anyways. So first order of business is approval of meeting minutes for February 23rd, March 8th, March 22nd, and April 11th.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of February 23rd, March 8th, March 22nd, and April 11th, 2016, as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. I might add, too, the one thing that didn't make the agenda today was to reconstitute the committee, and so I guess we'll do that at the next meeting. So I'm still chair.
17th, yeah.
I'm still chair for another week. Damn. Okay. Item 4 on the item 3 on the agenda is confirmation of future meeting dates, and we have May 17th, June 7th, and June 21st.
Those dates work?
If those days work for me.
I think they do for me. Yeah.
I may have the 21st may be in question for me, but I'll let you know, Anne Marie, as soon as possible.
Okay.
Sure.
Item 4 on the agenda is citizen speak. Any citizens would like to speak? Apparently none. Item 5 on the agenda is a hearing on discussion of a water bill for 35 Craig Street. So I'd like to invite Mr. Harlow up to the table to carry on. This is a continuation of a hearing that we had, was it Monday night or Tuesday? Monday.
Monday.
So I'll again open it up to you, Mr. Harlow. Do you have anything else to add or any?
The item that concerned me throughout the entire process was the chain of custody and why it took so long, over 3.5 months, to get the meter back, and nobody could tell me where it was or had it been tested. And you know, I, honestly, as a resident, I just wanted to know what was going on, and it could not be explained. And when the meter was changed, the person coming in was also supposed to inspect, and I understand completely that it was a substitute person. So there was no inspection of the house. It was the inspection of the meter, and the meter was taken away and sat on a shelf or sat somewhere, unbeknownst to me, for 3.5 months.
So you're saying that the house was not inspected for obvious water leaks or anything?
I believe it was prior, but at the time, and I don't know the protocol. I don't know if they're supposed to go through the house. I believe the person before came through and said there were no leaks. But when the meter was changed, I understood, and it doesn't honestly matter if he was going to check for leaks at that point, but he didn't. He went to the basement, changed the meter, it said before it's not leaking, and then changed the meter out. And then we waited 3.5 months. And it just, you know, to be very black and white in engineering, if it's science, that's fine, but this is not science. This is, you know, this is still binary, and the way we check the water and the meter and say, oh, there's no leaks because I didn't hear anything, that's not scientific. That's just, we can't prove it. And so to say that something is fact and not fact is impossible at this point. You know, we're not dealing with a rocket here. This is not NASA.
Sure.
So that being said, I still have a problem with the chain of custody and why it took so long for that. Had everything been done correctly and had, you know, gotten a response in 5 weeks and said, you know, we checked it, the meter's right, I would have thrown my hands up and said, well, something's going on. But I just got really suspicious. And then the day I call, the third or fourth time that when I call at that point, it's like, oh, let me give you a call back, let me check with them. And yep, they just happened to test it right before you called. Same day, 3.5 months later. And it was just very suspicious to me.
Well, we do now know that it had sat on a shelf for...
Well, yeah, but it's still suspicious that it was, you know, minutes before I had called before. That being said, I did see the letter from Mr. Lynch, and the average quarterly consumption over that period of time, not on 23, 22 is not my average. My average, which we just added up, is 1652.82. And I think Emily just added these up here, and it's 45 different quarters since we've lived there.
Did you count the red one in the last block?
I did not. I did not. That was minused out. And that averages, if you look at the, if you look,
Since inception, it's averaged.
since
16.
inception, which is down here, since we've lived there, there's no number that would put it to an average of 23, 22. It's just, it's impossible.
It looks
Joe,
like
you
Joe
have
did
that
it for a
in the
year,
record?
didn't he?
We always, in every single instance, look at the prior 4 quarters.
So it was just
Because we
the
don't
four-
allow any
it was just the
adjustments
4
prior to
quarters, it
1
was-
year.
yeah,
So we go to the prior 4
okay.
quarters, so
All right.
our average is.
So that explains
Okay, and those I can, those I can account for because I know we had guests, but, it's really the chain of custody is something I've take hubris with. It doesn't sit right.
I guess my question is, do you have any reason to doubt that, I mean, the meter appears to have been tested, I mean, albeit 3-4 months late, it does appear to have been tested. It appears that it is the same meter, and it came back with no, that it was not defective.
Well, do I have any reason to believe?
To doubt that.
Well, if our only piece of evidence is the meter, and the meter disappeared for 3.5 months, then that's in question. Who had it? And, it was sitting somewhere on a shelf that somebody, the first person who is no longer here, and I understand he can't defend himself, but that doesn't, excuse the fact that he said it's in, it was sent. And then they go back and they find out that it
It
wasn't.
was not, right.
And even he said it was already sent out.
Yeah,
So
and
I
guess-
have no basis to question it because I don't know the facility, I don't know the people, I'm just a consumer.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the other thing is, I agree that the chain of custody is a problem. It shouldn't have never occurred, that somebody, obviously the first time you called or at least the second time,
Or
and it
third,
still wasn't
yeah.
back, should have investigated at that time, and for whatever reason, that did not happen. I guess the other thing I can say, though, is because the meter, well, I shouldn't say because the meter was replaced, but it appears that the situation went back to normal, so it doesn't look like because the meter was 3 months being tested, that it caused you to use or have any additional spikes in your,
No, and leaks, whether we had them or not, just, doesn't matter what anybody said, they do not resolve themselves.
Yeah,
They just don't resolve themselves. If you have a rubber that is leaking, it's not suddenly going to repair. It's defective, you must replace it. They just don't repair.
I mean, I can't explain it.
I don't think anybody can.
Any other questions, or?
Well, just, Joe, you said you've had specific examples like this that have occurred in the past,
Certainly.
and,
Yes.
and those leaks have resolved.
Well, we're not going to even say leaks. I mean, we're
Okay.
speculating on where the water went. All we can say emphatically is that the meter was reading accurately. Water that went through the meter was red. Looking at a history of the meter, it seems to move at low and high range without any difference or without any question, so it seems to function. The test proved that out. So where the water went, I'm not going to say it's a leak. I could say it could be a neighbor pilfering. It could be anything. It could be anything. We've seen stranger things. We've seen contractors or landscapers come in and use water during the day and forget to squeeze the hose down at night, and then come back the next day where they're doing the continuing the work, shut it down. We've seen things like that. In this instance, we can't see anything. We weren't there. We had the high reading. On our follow-up, it was 21 days when we went out to change the meter over. By the time we had gone and changed the meter over, it had returned to normal flow. So looking for leaks, it was not likely we were going to find anything because it had already returned to normal flow. And since the new meter went in, it's starting to look just like it used to as well. One thing I do want to, and again, I know I have the floor until you take it away from me. I just want to put this in perspective. Our job in our department is to run a water department. We run it pretty darn well. In this instance, the flaw is We had a couple of people who simply didn't send a meter out for testing. To hear suspicion, to hear speculation, to hear, I'm curious, day before, it suggests something sinister. This is short money. Nobody in my department is going to compromise their career over a couple $100. That isn't even theirs. It's simply the department's, it's the town's money.
Right. Yeah, I understand
So we have
that.
no motivation.
And we
to do
have,
anything.
we have a lot of faith in your department and the employees that work in your department. I think that they do a heck of a job. You know, this is obviously just a very, a strange event that typically doesn't occur often. But obviously, the chain of custody is an issue. And I think that, you know, we need to look at kind of creating a new policy. And maybe Anne Marie, as our town administrator, could look at working on a new policy.
Absolutely agree. In fact, we've already had discussions with the folks that were involved who are still around now. They know clearly.
I think
You know, if we know it's 2 weeks to get a meter, someone's got to be asking, you know, we to test report back. Someone's going to be asking on the 15th day, where's my report? And it should be on a tickler file, on a calendar. You know, expect the report back. If it doesn't come in on this day, call and look for it. Now, that sort of stuff has to happen moving forward. And quite frankly, they come in, we send them out, we get them back. There's such a short window of time. It's never been a question before. This one was, clearly.
Burns, as a result of Monday night's meeting, that has in fact been started, that meeting.
Great.
Had Emily reach out to Ms. McGrath and Mr. Lynch, and we'll be meeting next week to go over a new policy and procedure and put something in place so this doesn't happen again, that a 3.5-month delay with someone not knowing where the meter went. So we are starting those steps.
Excellent.
And just for the record, I love Milton, and I can't imagine any of my neighbors pilfering my water. Especially, I mean, our next door neighbor is the town electrical inspector, and I know that we have very good neighbors, and they're not pilfering our water.
And again, I wasn't suggesting in
I
your
just can't imagine anybody in Milton doing that.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Apparently it's happened.
No, we've seen it. We've had neighbors that so much as admit it.
I'd hand them the water bill at that point.
I've heard a story a long time ago. I won't share it, but yeah, it has happened.
No, I trust my neighbors not to do that.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Harlow, when you were in on Monday, and we had a much longer discussion about this on Mondays, and I know unfortunately for the viewers who are watching it, they're kind of hearing it without the full background of Monday's hearing. But you brought to our attention a problem that in this case, the situation here was we had an employee out on a long-term illness who usually is the person who takes care of these sorts of things. And because of that, we had a couple of other employees who thought it was being handled and it wasn't being handled the right way. That's our understanding from Monday night. Putting the new policy in place, I think, is a good thing, and you've highlighted that this is a problem that we need to address. And customer service here is what it should have been in your case. So I think we should acknowledge that this should have been handled differently right from the get-go. Again, the issue, and I understand Joe's point the other night, is precedent, that we've had other situations where there's been a spike in a water bill like this, and we haven't been able to detect a leak. It's difficult or impossible to explain what the reasoning for it is, which seems to be the case here. What we haven't mentioned tonight, but we did mention the other night, is these water meters all have a specific number on them that's identifiable. So the thinking is that this meter sat on the wrong shelf in the water building at the DPW. There's no repairs that are made by any of the staff there. They're always sent out to a third party for testing or for any repair. Is that correct, Joe?
That's correct.
So, you know, there is a chain of custody issue, which is very unfortunate, but when the meter did go out for testing, it was tested to be reporting accurately, and the numbers could be checked. So it's not a question of whether it was a different meter. I think we should just confirm that. Given that, I think there was a customer service problem here, and you've done an important public service by bringing this problem to our attention and highlighting that there's a need to address customer service, but also come up with this new policy that Anne Marie and Joe and Darlene are working on.
And I think the second part that you've also brought to our attention too was that came out as a result of this hearing was the system we use to identify spikes, which is just kind of a manual, somebody actually looking down the list and hoping things pop out. And there clearly is a better method of doing it than that. And we will look into that.
We've already opened the dialogue up with our consulting vendor who does the software, not the billing. And that is something that can be done.
Good. Okay.
Now, Joe has recommended that accrued interest be waived in this case because,
I totally.
which I think we all agree with, and the town administrator had already put that on the table previously. I think that's only fair in this case, especially given the long time frame in which it took to test the meter. So I think we're all in agreement on
I'm in
doing
agreement with
that.
that as
Yes.
well.
Mr. Harlow, you said the other night that, this, it's not so much a financial issue for you, it's more of a principle issue. And I understand where you're coming from, and I understand the lack of customer service. I'm not sure that, I am concerned that if we were to make any exception in this case on the facts that's been presented, that would be a precedent for other cases that would not be in the best interest of the town.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that, coming in and talking to us about the principle and allowing us to now make some changes moving forward is going to help the town. And I think that, unfortunately, it doesn't, rectify your issue at hand right here. But I agree with Katie that if we did make an exception on this case, it would open up precedent for many others.
And, again, my principle was not even the customer service. It was, what are we going to do for the folks in town that cannot afford this? The elderly, the needy, the low income, and the people that are living paycheck to paycheck. It's not fair to say you still have to pay it. We can't prove that it was our fault, so the onus is on you to prove it. I don't think that's fair. Particularly, I have flexibility in my schedule. A lot of people work 2 to 3 jobs, and they would have to take time off to come here 2 days. And it's not fair to put people through hoops to do that. And, and even if we make the spikes available online to the elderly, many of them aren't going to be online. And, we don't have town Wi-Fi. Most of these people probably only have access at school. How are they going to find out that there's a spike in their bill and find out, the $7,000 bill, which is a contractor, but what if it's somebody on fixed income? It's not fair to say you still have to pay it, but we'll put you on a schedule. Then they have to decide, do I eat, do I buy my medicine, or do I pay my water bill? And, there was a threat to put a lien on my house, which I didn't appreciate.
Was it a threat?
It was.
Steve asked what would happen if I don't pay the bill.
I said, what is my recourse?
Would have to
And he
go to-
said, well, we put a lien on your house. And that's when I just said, we're not getting anywhere. But that's not a solution, and that's not acceptable to these other folks in the community. And again, that is my principle. It's fighting for that. I mean, my whole life, I grew up, my mother taught and directed Head Start for 32 years. And I am emphatic that in fighting for the underserved. And again, it's not a financial impact on us, but it's the principle is, what about these other folks that can't?
Well, I mean,
I don't
clearly,
think that's
we
fair.
do, if somebody were to have this situation and not have the income to pay it, we would work with them and stretch it out to any degree possible.
Well, yeah, and Mr. Lynch said there are many cases that you don't even see because he works out that deal. And I think, again, these people may not feel that they have any recourse, and they're told, you have to pay it, or we're going to put a lien on your house. And that is the message, and that's not a fair message.
So, it's rare, Tom, that it gets to the commission, the Board of Selectmen, while the commissioners. It's rare that it gets there. The vast majority get resolved at either Darlene's level or my level. It's
putting them
somewhat
on a
less
plan.
rare before it gets to you to get to Anne Marie. Whenever there's concern, when the person raises the concern that, geez, I don't have the ability to pay, at that point, it's not unilaterally to strike a deal. Anne Marie and I will sit down and conduct a private conversation in the most non-humiliating way possible, behind closed doors, to not embarrass anybody, and understand the circumstance, and we'll establish a payment plan that works for them. Again, I just want to be crystal clear. It wasn't a threat for lien. The question was raised, what happens if I don't pay my bill? And the answer is, if
As a
you
matter of
don't pay
course,
your
that
bill, it
would
does go
happen.
to lien.
Yeah.
It was not a threat, it was just a statement of fact. That's what happens if you don't pay the bill. So, assuming at some point in time resolution's made and the account comes square, that's not an issue anymore.
Right.
Yeah. I think in a case of a serious hardship, and we'd obviously have to look at the facts of each specific case, but as we talked Monday night, I mean, the problem here is that we're buying the water from the MWRA, so the town's paying the MWRA for the water, and we're selling it to consumers. And if we have a situation where a lot of people, or where there's forgiveness of a lot of bills for a lot of people because we can't identify why there was high usage in a particular property at a given time period, then that cost ultimately is going to get spread out among all the other users. So there's that balancing that really we have to do in these cases, that Joe outlined, I thought, pretty well on Monday night with what the test here is.
And part of the water bill is also sewer. Do we pay the MWRA for sewer as well?
Yes.
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 Both. Actually, the sewer assessment's almost double the water assessment.
I
Which is
know.
why our bill is
Yeah,
structured that way as
unfortunately,
well.
yes.
That I know.
So unfortunately, in this case, I don't think we can abate anything other than including the interest on the subsequent water bills that haven't been paid. We'll abate all interest on this.
I agree with that. I don't know if we, do we have a motion or?
And one more question, though, is I was told I have not been billed for the meter change. Am I going to be billed for that now?
No, I think that should be
No.
waived also.
Yeah,
that should be waived.
This is
Given
given the
the
3-month delay.
circumstances.
I think we,
I agree.
this is a circumstance in which that should be waived.
I think we discussed that when we met.
We did, but
I
it
said
was,
that-
it was,
yeah.
it was a hallway conversation, or I might have,
No, we had the.
we had the
no,
discussion
we
that I
dis-
hadn't yet been billed.
No,
but would I be
when
billed?
I met
Yeah,
with you,
no,
that
it
I
had that
told
been,
you would not
I don't think we
be
do, period, when a
Remember?
meter's called
In
into
this room.
question. And you would have
It was
seen
a
that back,
75
you would have seen that back in
I was told there
September.
was a $75 charge,
Yep.
a testing
No.
fee.
The testing fee would have normally been passed along, should approve out,
No,
but
but
in
when
this instance, we
Mr.
won't.
Harlow met with me
And
in
Darlene.
this office, I said that would not be his responsibility because of the chain of custody that it
Oh, yeah,
took
completely
3.5
agree.
months.
Yeah, so it's not the
So-
cost of the new meter, it would have been the cost for testing, which
Yeah.
absolutely, we wouldn't charge for. There's no question in this instance.
But again, Mr. Harlow, I do think you've brought an important public service point to the forefront, and we have to address this going forward.
And changes are
Town
going to be
administrator's
made
already
because you
taken the
brought
lead
this to
on
our
it.
attention. So we obviously appreciate that, and though this outcome might not be perfect for you, it's actually helping other residents in the town.
No, and like I said before to Anne Marie and Darlene, I'd be happy to help, the moderator interviewing these folks, because if he's not technical, he's not going to be able to interview technical folks, and I do IT directing and project management, so I'm very technical.
We always take volunteers, and we appreciate
So
that.
I'm extremely technical, and I know databases extremely well, and sometimes it's not just cut and dry.
Okay, so-
But there are methods.
Well, Mr. Harlow, thank you for your patience in
Thank
this,
you.
and for
And I suppose we
being
should
here for
probably
the
take a
2
formal-
meetings
You have to
this
take a
evening.
vote.
Yeah,
This week.
so I'll make a
Not to
motion
abate.
to waive the interest in question during the period of this spike,
With the $75 testing fee. as
and the
well.
$75 testing fee as well that was incurred on behalf of Mr. Harlow.
And not to abate any water usage.
Yes, and not to
Is the
abate any water
interest
usage
true now?
related to this.
Yes.
Because I've been,
Through the
okay.
press.
Anything that accrued right up to the day we forgive it, which will be an data entry tomorrow. So everything will be wiped.
So I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could indulge 30 seconds just to announce our Public Works open house for the folks at
Yes,
home.
absolutely.
If you don't
That was
mind.
on my list.
National Public Works Week begins next week, and it's observed across all of North America, including Canada and even parts of Mexico. And Milton observes it like we do with all of our brothers and sisters across the country. And how we observe it is we conduct our annual open house, and this year it'll be on Saturday, May 14th. It's from 10 until 1. We have all the equipment and trucks out for the kids to, kick the tires and beep the horns. We have a recycling magician. We have hot dogs and hamburgers. It's a fun time for the kids. It's kind of hokey for the adults, but please come down and have a good time anyway. Act like a kid.
What is a recycling magician?
It's a magician whose entire act is around making things turn, like paper turn into clipboards and bottles turn into other things, and he just has a really, it's like a real niche, and we've latched into him. He's pretty good. BJ Hickman is his name. And we also present our Larry DeSell Friend of Public Works Award, which I can't announce now, but I will announce on Saturday at noontime. So we encourage everybody to come on down, rain or shine, hopefully good weather. Hot dog, hamburger, have a great day, and I
That's a
hope
great
you guys
event.
all come too.
That's great. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Joe.
Joe.
Okay, item 6 on the agenda is a conference with the Town Administrator Search Committee. I'll invite Gene Boylan and Rick and Mary.
Hi, Rick, how are you?
Hi, Rick. How are you?
Hi, good evening.
How's everybody doing?
Hey, Gene. Hi, Mary.
Great, good evening. How are you?
So I'll let you start. You get the floor.
So, we are 4 of the 8 members of the Town Administrator Search Committee that this board and our town administrator have appointed. And we are charged with presenting to the board 3 candidates for the position of strong town administrator. As part of that charge, number 3 requests us to consult with this board in regard to the job description and qualifications. So we have provided you the act that was signed into law on March 31st by the governor. We have taken the original town meeting warrant from 2015 and compared that line by line to the act. We found no substantial differences between those 2 documents, so we're working off the act. You have a copy of that. We have taken the act and reduced what you might call the legalese of the Chapter 65 Act and turned it into more straightforward language, and that's a description that's been provided to you of about 1.5 pages. We have then likewise presented a list of qualifications. There are about a dozen, basically. And our interest here is to present that to you, to gain your approval to it, to answer any questions you may have regarding it, and to get a sense from yourselves about any details, any specifics you may have in regard to the qualifications for the position of town administrator.
Okay, I did read through it. Personally, I thought it was well-written. I really don't have,
Yeah, you know, I read through it,
the qualifications were...
and I think you guys have done a fabulous job. You know, obviously, the group itself has a lot of experience, and I mean, I look around here, and I also see our town manager from Westwood, Mike Gillette, on board here as well, and we appreciate you spending your time to help us in our search with all of your years of experience, so thank you. But you guys have done an outstanding job, and I know that the other committee members who aren't here contributed an awful lot to this as well. And you've really narrowed it down so that we can really attract and seek the best qualified candidate for our town, you know, for the uniqueness of our town.
Just to give you, this is Rick Neely, just give me a little basis on how this was developed. This came originally out of the Town Government Study Committee. It was submitted to the board in October of 2012 at the time, at the prior search process. And then what we've done is taken what was submitted by the Town Government Study Committee, made the changes that conform to the legislation in the town meeting article, and that's fit into this. So those are some of the changes that we can show you. There's a red line version that compares to the original description back in October of 2012.
Yeah, if you
This
could
does
send that around, that would be helpful.
Yeah, it reflects the work of the committee back then, and it, again, takes
Where
into
it's come
account
from, yeah.
all the changes that we built into the article itself.
That's great. Like I said, I think the criteria, for the candidate were perfectly stated. I think that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for, clearly a strong town administrator that has the right qualifications. Somebody that's, and I think it did mention there, it's going to have to be a consensus builder because you're going to deal with a lot of, separate elected boards and that you don't have control over, and it's not going to be the easiest job in the world, clearly.
No. I had just a couple of things on this, the key responsibilities down on the first page, which is really a question. The last one says, responsible for the negotiation of all union and non-union contracts with town employees. And then it goes on, it says, except employees of the school department, which makes sense, and Chapter 13 employees. Is that because you're because the role of the personnel board, or was there some other reason for exempting that? Because the Chapter 13 employees is a diverse group of people that are in different departments. The town administrator can speak to this better than I can, but there's still a role for the town administrator with the Chapter 13 employees.
Ms. Conlon, the Chapter 13 employees are under the care, custody, and control of the Personnel Board. And they're a very small number of
They are, but
employees,
that's why I asked.
They vote the wage adjustment for the people that are in Chapter 13.
Well, they do, but I think what we want, and part of this is, we've asked the Town Government Study Committee to look at the role of the Personnel Board, but I think what we really want is the town administrator doing, obviously you can't supersede what their current role is, but doing more of the, working hand in hand more closely with the Personnel Board and more guiding the Personnel Board in some ways on some things. So if the carve-out is because the Personnel Board approves the specific increase,
That was the
then,
reason.
but I think obviously the town administrator is still going to be overseeing these employees.
Absolutely, and
In terms of performance and everything, yes.
Yes.
To the extent they're under the,
It was just the wages, we're just trying to conform to the existing bylaw.
yes,
Yeah,
and there is
but
dialogue, Ms. Conlon, that takes place
Yes.
with the Personnel Board, and when I was the Assistant Town Administrator, and now that I'm the Town Administrator, there's a dialogue that takes place every year, and we talk about the Consumer Price Index, and we talk about what I'm negotiating with other union employees when they vote their wage adjustment for Chapter 13 employees.
Because I think we'd want the strong town administrator to be making recommendations to the Personnel Board on what those increases should be to keep them in line with the others. I mean, that's the Personnel Board's goal anyway, existing, but I think we want to be sure that the town administrator is helping drive some of that.
Well, we can amend the language here to capture that.
Anything else?
On the next page, and this is probably aspirational more than anything, but I guess a little more than halfway down towards the end, three paragraphs are from qualifications where we talk about coordinating publication of the annual report. The second sentence says the report shall be published annually and made available to the public not later than 4 months after the end of the period on which it's based, which would be the fall. That would be a great aspiration, but
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think it's
not
ever, it's usually delivered around the time of the following town meeting. I think it
delivered a
arrived the
couple
day of
days
the
ago,
first
right?
town meeting.
Yes,
So that would be great if we could get there, but you're talking about a lot of independent boards that have to do
You're
those
correct, that was
reports.
aspirational.
Yeah, okay,
Yes,
all right.
and you do have to wait for the audit as well, so that the financials will be put into the annual report.
Which probably puts it out even
And
beyond the 4
historically,
months.
the annual report has gone out to town meeting members 7 days before the April election. That's normally the course. This year, we had a few departments that are a little late in getting it back to us, and that was the delay.
So do you have a suggestion as to how you would substitute for the 4?
Well, I guess the audit is a good point. We'd have to take into account the audit because the town,
well, by law, the audit has to be done in 9 months after year end, so, but it's always done before that, it's always done in
It's
November.
usually done in,
Yeah.
November,
maybe by
December.
December 31st. Maybe that's an aspirational goal that's more realistic.
Right, and that's when we do send the letters out, is in November. We send letters out to all departments and boards and committees requesting their annual reports. So it's kind of,
Which we should probably, I think we actually sent it out sooner this
Well,
year.
July.
Yeah.
I think last year we moved it up.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
requested
because of
September
the
1st
late,
for- yeah.
the lateness the time before.
When you really think about it, there's no reason why you couldn't have the whole thing done waiting for the audit. I mean, there's no excuse for it being a year late.
Yeah.
Those were the only two things that jumped out at me, but otherwise, I thought the description of this, the summary of the key responsibilities looked good.
Okay, so do you want to approve this with those couple of changes?
Yes.
Do you have a motion?
Yeah, I think the qualifications look good as well.
I did
I
too.
had some grammatical
Absolutely.
changes, I'll just give you my copy.
And I really like that the annual review of department heads and employees with respect to the annual performance day-to-day with employees. I think that's something we've lacked a bit in the last few years, and I think that's going to help us really maintain, strong department heads too.
Good.
So I think that's excellent. Okay, so we
And
have
I
a
like the
motion.
fact that you have preferred language in here in a couple of places, because I remember that on the Town Government Study Committee. That was a concern that initially, 4 years ago, that the description of the qualifications at that time were a
Would
little
be
too
beyond, yeah,
stringent.
beyond what we
then-
had, yeah, legally
then
could, yeah.
It might have foreclosed a group of people who could be good candidates from applying, so I'm glad you changed some of that.
The committee talked about that, in terms of where we would draw from. To your point, we wanted to have your consensus about this before we went to advertising.
So while we have you here, outside of the, obviously the letter we're ready to approve, but the rest of the process, maybe just for the public's, just
Sure.
wanna bring everybody up to date.
So the, probably the next piece is the advertising for this position. So we've identified either in print, Milton Times, Boston Globe, Patriot Ledger, the Beacon, which is the Bible of the MMA. Maybe not the Bible, but certainly the place where you advertise, as well as online. Two venues there. And the Beacon ad would be put in, we're at where now? We're at the 5th, and that would go in about 10 days and be published right at the beginning of June. In the first few days of June, we'd look at 2 months there. And on the other venues, we'd roll that through maybe, in some instances, 30 days, maybe once every week for, might be a month. So those details are not finalized, but in general, you get the picture. In terms of cost for the advertising piece, looks now like in the low thousands of dollars, probably somewhere around $2,000, given what we have on the plate right now. There may be some increase to that depending on where we go. In terms of geography, if you look at the region, we're focused on obviously Massachusetts, but also the other New England states with this similar form of town government. As you can imagine, once something gets up, whether it be in print or on the internet,
It travels, yeah.
can travel quite a distance. That is the detail of where and how much in terms of the when. It would start pretty quickly. So we could see things in print even before the beginning of June in the Beacon. In terms of, let's stretch it out a little bit more, the question hasn't been asked, but what happens next? So we will get applicants coming back to us, and what we would imagine is in a rolling kind of basis, we'll take a look at them as they come in. So as something comes in, we'll take a look at maybe the first 5 and then the second 5 and so on. One of our next tasks is to develop a uniform set of questions at the various stages of the interview process. And so that's a bit of a brief overview. Mary, anything else I'm leaving out here?
I think you hit the highlights, and really, the next steps are the committee engagement around developing the question lists and the process from which we'll follow.
Great.
So,
Right.
Great.
Good, it sounds like it's
Yeah.
well organized and thought out.
yeah, it's a good committee.
Yeah,
Good
thank you all.
process.
So
Thank you.
clearly, the process, just for, in all likelihood, we will not have a new town administrator by July 1st. That would be
That's right.
a miracle if we
That
did.
would be a miracle.
But we're hopeful sometime over the summer.
The fall.
So it depends on, I would hope as well.
Depends what the
Of course,
pool of candidates
the
is
summer
like.
goes into September, right?
It does. It does, yes.
Probably more likely, right?
So I would agree with Katie, it's probably more likely. Obviously, it depends on the response. We don't have a real accurate way to measure response. You all may have your own points of information on similar communities close to us or in the region. But we'll, as someone said here before, it's an attractive opportunity for anyone, we believe, who's in this field. A very attractive opportunity.
It absolutely is, yeah. I mean, Milton's, when you look at the size of the town, it's a reasonably good-sized town. So, I believe it is.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that it's a unique town, it's a very diverse town, and I think that, something that's going to be very attractive is that we have a good working board right now, that someone who knows from the outside that can come in and understand that they're going to be supported by a group that deeply cares about the community.
That's important, it's important. It's really important. It's important that we get this right rather than we do it quickly, so
Oh, yeah.
whatever
Absolutely.
time we need, we need.
Rick and Mike and Mary, any other points that we should touch on here?
No, I just think we should get the formal endorsement of the description with the modifications suggested, so that we can proceed, if you can.
May I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Are you going to have the resumes delivered to our office so that we can make the copies for the committees and
You know, we've
members
talked
and get
about
them out
that.
to you?
I think we'll have probably a clearer view on, after our meeting on Monday evening.
All right, so we can
Yes.
talk about that.
If we can keep it electronic, that would be great.
Okay. So we can follow up on that.
Right,
Great.
good. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the offer.
So you're looking for us to approve the key responsibilities and the qualifications?
Yes.
I guess the whole job description.
Right.
All right, so I'll move that we approve the Milton Town Administrator job description dated May 4th, 2016, as presented by the Town Administrator Search Committee,
With the modification?
with the minor modifications.
And I'll second that motion.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
you.
And
Appreciate
thanks
it.
for all your services.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks, Gene. Thanks, Mary.
Okay, moving on. Item 7 is the approval of a 100th birthday letter.
This is great. I'm going to make a motion to approve and sign a letter of recognition to commemorate Milton resident Harriet Gibbons's 100th birthday.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Item 8's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to bring my
You wanna
warrant with me.
discuss the annual town
Yes, I think we should.
Do you want to go grab some warrants?
Love to congratulate Bob Hiss and
Yeah.
his
Yes.
the great job that he did as a newly elected town moderator.
I think he, I can imagine what it must be like up there, your first time, you're all by yourself, and you're up there for, 3 or 4 hours each day. It's a tough job.
Did a heck of a
He did a
job.
great job.
Yeah.
He did. It was nice to finish it in 2 nights.
I think town meeting appreciated that.
Yeah, I heard a lot of good positive comments. Thank you. So this was on to discuss the articles, obviously, because I thought we'd still be in town meeting.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
but now that we've finished, we should probably talk about the fact that one of them was referred back to us for further study.
Yeah, and I think we have 2 we have to look. I think we should kind of, I think some relevant points were made about the leash that maybe need some clarification. I mean, the article passed,
Yes.
so I wouldn't want to tweak it a lot, but at least some clarification, I think, might be in order on that.
Well, the good news was that Nancy Bersani, the animal control officer, was there and was answering a lot of questions. So she knows what the issues were that people raised, and we could refer it to her to see whether there's anything that
Yeah.
she'd like to recommend that we consider for whether it's a future amendment or
Right.
if she'd like to keep it as it is. But I
Yeah.
think we should defer to her on that.
Yeah, I mean, the most troubling one was the issue that got raised on the private property, and,
Yep.
the inconsistencies, I guess, for lack of a better, that was there, but
Well,
it did pass.
but I think we could let the police department take the first crack at that.
That's a good
and,
point.
Yeah, I agree.
Revisiting it and then coming back to us with some kind of a recommendation.
And then the other one was the noise bylaw was.
Yeah, so I think we should say a little bit about that. I mean, the construction start time bylaw came back to us for further study. And, there's a lot of talk about landscaping, and I think we just have to make it clear, the complaints that Joe Prondak, our building inspector, has been getting has not been about landscaping. They've been about projects such as the Seasons Hospice, which generated a lot of
Yeah.
comments from Wildwood Road and residents in that area who were hearing construction starting at 5 or 6 in the morning. Same thing, not far where I am, on the former Milton Women's Club on Mary Webster Lane.
Yep.
We got comments from construction starting at 6 a.m. on those projects. So the reason that we submitted this article on behalf of our building inspector was there've been complaints about construction companies starting this work at a very early hour in the morning. And going into late at night, sometimes 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So that was what generated this article. And obviously, town meeting members voiced a concern about landscaping, so I think we should consider whether we should submit
And
something
I've
for
heard
that.
I've heard that from other people before. So there's certainly some, especially when you're in closer communities, that you know, to start up a power mower at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't know that any, I guess there have been some issues with leaf blowing and
I'd
stuff
like to
that.
suggest, though, too, that we look at what other towns do. The other
Oh,
towns
absolutely,
have
yeah.
noise ordinances, and it simply covers everything, and it works pretty fine for them. So just a suggestion that we look at what other towns are doing as well.
Yeah, we can, and I know Joe looked at some, but maybe he didn't
Yeah,
cast a
and-
wide enough net, but town council's
But I
colleague
think we
wrote this
really should
article.
vet that a little bit more. I think that
Yeah.
looking at what other towns do, talk to some other towns, what they feel is working, why it works well for them, and just a little bit more feedback would be beneficial for us.
Also get an understanding of what state law is on some of those things, because state law does have some,
Yeah.
especially on landscaping.
But I do think it's important for our board to note, you know, town council's colleague wrote this article, and they have a lot of experience with other towns, so
Sure,
I think
I
they
agree.
did base this on what exists in some other towns,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it doesn't obviously hurt to revisit it. Who should be the point person on that, I think is the question. Is that something we'd want the building inspector to take the lead on for us?
I think so. I mean, he's the one that wrote it originally. He's the one that has to deal with the complaints, so.
Well, it was actually, Mr. Chairman, it was actually written by Murphy, a member, an attorney in Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lahane's office,
And-
with
and
input from
Joe.
your building
Yeah, okay.
commissioner.
So why don't we ask that Joe do some preliminary work on this?
Yeah,
Whether landscaping should be part of it, whether it should be a broader.
and then come back to
article.
us with recommendations, yeah. I agree.
Okay.
The other one that was referred to us, and it was not initially submitted by us, was the bread and breakfast tax.
Yeah, I have some real
Yes.
concerns on that, and based upon the resident, Mr. Minsky, who spoke, you know, I believe that, you know, in my quick opinion would be that we need to establish a small committee that can work with some of our department heads on tackling or rewriting this so that it covers, so that the police can take action, so that, you know,
You mean the main, all right, I was only referring to the tax article, but you're referring to the main bed and
The bed and
breakfast, which was a
breakfast
planning
article,
board article. but-
Yeah.
So,
but I
We
just
may
have
want
a
to
lot
have a
of
conversation
concern
with the
for
planning board about
communities
that.
that are impacted by these issues, because that's a big deal, you know, when he mentions that, you know, it's a house that is having parties where people are wandering, you know, and that we can't do anything about it. Well, we ought to be able to do
Yeah,
something about it.
which was beyond me, because, I mean, from what he was describing, that was illegal activity.
Correct.
I mean, I guess you have to catch it, but certainly that was illegal activity.
Yeah, no question.
and it's not currently a bed and breakfast at that property. But I guess his
No.
concern was that it could be used for that purpose, since it's a
Well,
large estate.
Or there may have been some vagueness in it. Well, I guess anything can be, but, you know, at least as a bed and breakfast, it would then have a set of criteria which you could close it down by. But,
Yeah, that may be, I mean, obviously the main bed and breakfast article is a planning board article, not one of
Right.
our articles.
So-
but
That's
the
right.
tax article, yeah, I mean, I guess it didn't dawn on me when I first saw it, but it makes sense that, you know, the planning board can't set taxes. But it probably does make sense to come forward with an October article. You know, even though we really don't have any hotels, motels, or bed and breakfast now, we do have Airbnbs, we know that. At one point in time, I know because I counted them, there were 8 operating in the town.
There are now 4.
And, you know, it's questionable whether you can tax them, but, I mean, there's a lot of communities, including Boston, that are getting very concerned about them, and the lack of regulation, and so.
I didn't know there was a question as to whether they could be taxed, so, okay, so that's something we need to look into then.
Yeah, yeah, there really are. At this point, I don't think any place does. I think they skirt around because nobody's clear, is it truly a bed and breakfast, or is it not, or, you know, you just, but clearly, these people are renting out under Airbnb on a daily basis. And there are people now just buying houses for no other reason than to put them up in Airbnb.
Well, there needs to be regulations.
All right, so it sounds like as though we need to look into because town meeting has put this back to us, not the tax
Yeah,
article, so we
yeah.
need to do some further follow-up on that.
Right.
But, yeah, the issue you're raising, David, I know, we may have to talk with the planning board. I think those were the only ones that were sent back to us. Well, actually, the other one was not really sent back to us, but the affordable housing or the Alvin Avenue, it's not going to be used for affordable housing.
Right.
You've said that the trustees are no longer
Correct.
seeking that property for
Correct.
it. But the legal title has now been transferred to us, and the only question we committed
What
to
do we do with
looking
it?
into is whether we would work with the park commissioners to either transfer it to them or take some other action that would
Yeah, I think
enable
I
it to be
think
used
we
as
would
a
be
part of the
amenable
park.
to meeting with
I
them.
guess
and-
if the park commissioners are willing to make it into a pleasant-looking park or, of some kind, I don't think it makes sense to be a ball field, it's certainly not big enough.
Yeah.
But, if they're willing to put the money into doing that, then by all means.
And taking care of the location.
Right.
And making it look, well-groomed and respectable for the neighborhood would be
Right,
great.
right. Okay, anything else?
Does somebody want to take responsibility for that, or how do we want to divide, what do we want our next steps to be on these?
The tax one, I think we just need to put it on the agenda and have some discussions about it.
For the Alvin Avenue one, is that?
The Alvin
I'm happy
Ave
to
one?
take the lead on the Alvin
Okay.
Avenue and
Just
work
talk
with the
with the park
parks
commissioners.
commissioners on
Okay.
that, okay?
That'd be great.
And then I think we already figured
Joe
out.
Mr. Pondek will...
Joe be the lead on
Yes, I'll
the,
speak with him about doing some preliminary work on the construction
Good.
start time article.
but we should be ready to bring it back in October, so, it's something that, I'd like to see him report back to us over the summer sometime, so that it'll be
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah, and on that note, it's beyond the scope of number 8, but I think we should have on probably a May or June agenda, fall town meeting articles that we want to consider submitting. Because I probably want to ask this board to submit one for the reconstitution of the Traffic Commission, to include residents on the Traffic Commission.
Yeah.
That was an issue that came up a lot during the campaign, and
Yep,
so
okay.
we can talk more about it at a future meeting.
All right.
Sure.
Item 9 is Town Administrator Report.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to remind everybody about the DPW Day on May 14th, but Joe already
you
did
stole your
that.
thunder.
So
But you can say it again, that's all right.
it is a great time, I will say. I have gone
Yes,
in past
yeah.
years. And the little children are really cute, climbing on all the
Yeah.
machines and the trucks and the backhoes. And it is good.
The chair does not have a report tonight. Member reports?
I just want to pass along condolences to the family and friends of Audrey Manning, the wife of our late great State Representative Joe Manning. I know the wake is this evening, and the funeral is tomorrow at 12:30, I believe, at St. Agatha's. But they did an awful lot for this town, and it's
Sure,
greatly
yeah.
appreciated.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes, I agree. I'm sorry, go ahead. Did you?
No,
I
that's
thought you were
it.
gonna-
No.
The only thing I wanted to bring up is, I think all of us have gotten 400 to 500 emails from
Yeah.
residents
yeah.
about
Not-
airplane
Not totally
noise.
appreciated, because I already, we're already on board with them.
Yeah.
They didn't have to
It's-
crash my email.
500 emails is a lot to respond to, so I thought we could just generally acknowledge it on television, that we've received these emails from all of the
And we have-
residents who are, and the petition is going to,
And we appreciate their concerns.
Yeah,
and-
Yes.
yeah.
And as Andy stated, as our Airplane Noise Advisory Committee Chairman, we are on board, fully on board.
Absolutely.
Fighting this issue hand in hand, and we will not slow down. We will be relentless in our goal to eventually, spread the wealth.
yeah.
Yep.
And those emails are really, I think, intended for Massport and the FAA, but
Right.
which Massport is responding to all of these people individually on the chance that all of us are not. I'm guessing we're not all going to be writing 500 responses. We could at least do it generally to let people know we've received them, and we certainly sympathize. Also on the airplane noise issue, at one of our prior meetings, it might have been 2 meetings ago, we had 2 different meetings. Andy Schmidt was in at one meeting, and then Jen Goonan was in at the next one, and they had made some recommendations to us about some letters that they wanted us to sign, one to Senator Warren, to make some amendments, to request some amendments to her legislation. The most important thing there was a date that the RNAPs were adopted.
Yep.
And then the other one was a letter to Congressman Lynch asking that he ask the national academies to conduct a further medical study of impact of these sorts of RNAVs over communities. So I know the committee has been, the airplane committee has been working on those letters, and they're pretty close to final form. With our meeting not until the 17th, we'd really like to get these out very soon. So I think we've already agreed that we would sign their letters and submit them.
Yep.
And they're pretty much in progress, so I think we might want to just try to make ourselves available to sign those in the next few days.
Yeah, and I also, things related to the medical portion, and I know the Board of Health has now been notified, I'd like to just ensure the accuracy on that from the Board of Health, because I think that, and I'm sure everything is fine, but I just want to make sure that we're signing a document that is completely accurate.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think we've already agreed to send the letters, so I think
Great.
that piece of it is covered, so.
Yes.
The letters are almost in final form.
Okay.
I think the committee's just looking at one more of them to finalize it.
Okay. Let's see, citizen speak responses, there were no citizen speak. No citizens spoke. Future agenda items. Let's make sure that I'm not chair the next time.
Our next meeting, Mr. Chairman, is May 17th, so you'll be chair for a little while until we reorganize.
Okay.
We'll make that the first item on the agenda, though, for you.
Aye.
Sounds like a bit of relief for you, Mr. Chair.
A little bit. Anything else? No? Okay. This says we're going to recess the town meeting, but I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Got a second?
Seconded.
We're adjourned.